venga ke hepe ko fotu ke fai a hano talanga I ka tu e dau hogati e fin pa fepe motor ke kui ke pa taurot tua mas ko mau mai taingata ya Fiona oku taingata ho a Fio he koi ke mau malawa ke mau tolu ke eke ia fehu I pena e kamata bea me fe a ho Fio pea oku mau nofo wakiri pea mau sio pe e ngata koa ai a Fiona ki he fe ia pea whaftai ho mau lau marie ko hi ko e ahoni oku mau kauwhata pe he ngahi tala noa ko a Fiona ku misiteria pea wawanga ki ai ai ada mai ai tangata pea I he fini oku toa ma beho mau loto he ngahi mai moa ai a Fiona o ke fai mai mau ngahi mo ui to e vai ke funga e fonua pea ku me ite ai mea mo ui ko toa pe he koe uhi koe tāwang ko ia ku inasi ai pe ia o tatau ai pe wanga fe tu unga mo ui o ku mau iai o ku inasi ai lau vare o inasi ai ma olunga o ku inasi ai masiwa kama kinau tolu o ku mau mea pea mau whamoni ako tu ai a Fiona o kai pe whiri mana ko e tau ai a Fiona whawhia heo mau lau marie ko hi ko e whakahoko ai mau amanaki ko nia e po talanoa ko whai a hono teu pea nai whamohe bea mei ulu pea ko nia ku mau kau I he whiwhini o ku mau whawhitai atu atu koe mau note peki ho a Fio ke whaita abukina mai a ho tā mai o eki ko manaki kene tataki a po talanoa o e whiwhini hape koloa ko teu hono loto ko hi ke whakakoloa ki mau tolu o mau kore peke ke whaita abukina mai tāpak mai a e tino e apini ka mai puriaka mai kau ngau tāpak mai a e kinau tolu ko toa pe kau whanongo e tāpak mai a kinau tolu ko toa pe he o pe ko nau mea mai ke ngau e ko mau whai he whiwhini tāpak mai a ki mau tolu ka pau ko whina ngalo ke awi ki mau tolu ke tomu yo ngau e o e whiwhini e whai pe ho o whina ngalo o na whai ho mau tolu loto o ni mai a e ki tau kau e mkoe loto yo mau whai e huafa ta mai mai alo lau maria maani oni amen
Famalo kia eti I whahako koia ai lote he whiwhini ke kamata ke tau tala noa koia I he tala noa ako I he whiwhini ko whaapapala ke a Fio tua mafmaf I he tau lotonga e tua watu hepe a moe tini iwa kistua mo iki mafto fa mama mo hamata pure pure ako fa baba ni ki he kespika ko ya o fefin ya tokita Opeti Pulotu kai ata mo ke fa mari ki fa pa ha ti tata ki tun ko fa ai na fo ko weekend hono ni mai tau lalanga mai fala ko ia ta ko tawa o mai ke tetepu o fala ko ia hono uaki pe ko pe fa am te tau lama le ia he wi kau pe ko hono ni mai ni o fe unu tau lalanga he pon pe ko fa am pe ke o te to fa kalo ka introduce it mua e tau ke speaker ko ia he pon ko Opeti Pulotu nei taula mama na ne kamatahu ki he lautohi he tahi wawalu tolu na ne he chi piesa taula pe ne lawa le ia ne hoko atu ne finga ko ki he polisi sanere he tahi wawalu hiwa ke tahi wa tolu hiwa wa pe na ne hoko mai o ne hoko form 1 no ki he tahi wa hiwa fa I he ako malunga Tonga High School pe kau ia kau pioneer ko ia o Tonga National Form 7 I tahiwa hiwa pe I tahiwa hiwa no na hoko atu ene whenga ko ki Australia ki Adelaide ki Ennis Perry College Pe tahiwa hiwa fitu ki he tahiwa hiwa na le mawai hono matai tohi ko Bachelor of Science, Chemistry with Biochemistry i he Flinders University i Adelaide, Australia. I he wanoa tahaua na e maua hono whailonga ko Master of Assessment i he Master of Assessment, Measurement and Evaluation i he University of Western Australia i Australia. Wanoa tahawa na e hoko atoa ne whenga ko ki Britannia ki he University ko ia ko Durham University pe wanoa tahawalu na ne kunai hono matai tohi ko PhD i Assessment and Measurement. Ko ia haia ai tuku au mai ia ko ia tokita Opeti Pulotu ko ne ki historia ngā aue i he wawhe na ne hoko ai ko Assistant Graduate Teacher i he Wawa'u High School. Pe i wawhe maua na ne hoko ai ko Senior Lecturer i Wawa'u High School. I wawhe maano na ne hoko ai ko Principal i Niuafo'ou District High School. Waf ma fitu i waf ma walu na ne hoko ko Deputy Principal i he Wawa'u High School. I he wafe hongofuru wafe no hiwa na ne ma'awai ai post i he TNQAP ne hoko ai ko Principal i he Assessment i he TNQAP. I wafe taha hiwa le hoko ai ko CEO i he TNQAP. Ai ko ta'u ia tahiwa e wanoa nai ngā ue i rau ke lakanga ma'olunga ko e taki ngā ue i potu ngā ue ko ia TNQAP. Ko ia ko ia ngaia ai tukua umai ai ki historia no pe ki ako mo ngā ue e fau mai ai Dr. Opeti ko kore te mutol o te tau te whalo ka mo pasi mai mua tau tau.
Ko le vege u whamarmalu e lotu nai kamata ki tau ki proklama talatala noa e tiawhini. O ongo i mawhanau bito, kia mohonga ia e tiawhini. Neongo ngari alota mati mo uha. I deeply humble. Very pleased at the same time that I've been invited to be part of this public lecture series. And I have to thank Moana for this initiative, which it's so dear to me because I'm very passionate about education. Anything about education, I'm into it. Knowing that getting a PhD, it's come with responsibility, whether you like it or don't like it, but you have to learn it when you come to Tonga. There are responsibility that you have to align with, that you have to take, and part of those responsibilities are being engaged and involved in this kind of academic educational forum like this. I don't know whether it's really related with my capacity as a CEO of the TNQAB, knowing that we really try to empower and encourage providers related with any degree programs, especially TIOE, in related with research. So tonight is a special night to me. I was looking forward to it. And I don't really know what I'm going to talk about, but I was always looking forward to be engaged in anything about academic. Listening to Moana talk about a little bit of my history or background of my educations, why I'm a CEO now and why I did PhD in assessment, because if you listen carefully to him, he did mention I was in a primary school where I was resided and where I lived at Vavau, GPS Tola. It's something that I always, I'm never afraid to share because I hope for the target audience tonight, some of you might be students, trainee students, but I I never passed, I never admit to any secondary school. When I was class 6, I never passed any exam. That's why I was in Kelana, Kolisi Kelana, Sanele Kolisi. Because I failed to pass any exam in class 6. So my parents has to go and ask the principal that day to me to be admitted at Kelana. Not because I was that dumb, sorry for the language, but I think it has an impact long run on how I think about assessment. Since that very moment, when I learned from the radio, my name was never announced, it has an impact on me about assessment. And from that day, that night, I know I'm gonna do something about assessment. Whatever it takes for my life, I will work something out. So to get something like PhD, I never really know that I went up PhD in assessment and measurement. But that was the event, the phase of the many events, many phases in my life that contribute to why I was so passionate and I was so, assessment is so dear to me. Maybe the second, the latest one of those events, it was last year. And I'm not afraid to say it tonight. Maybe one time I said it in one of the workshop training in TIOE, but one of the recent events, it was directly related with my daughter, my eldest daughter. She was in Form 7 last year. She was in Tonga High. She was the proxy. But I have to tell you, it's not something that is not to be shy of. We have to pay credit for those things. She was proxy, but she came the top overall in Tonga in Form 7. So all those issues with assessment, it's like reconfirmed to me why you did PhD in assessment and measurement. Anyway, let's go back to what I'm going to talk about tonight. Let's see if it works. Do I have to press this? Yeah. The topic that I'm going to talk about tonight, it has some relations with my research on my PhD, and it's a carry on for my master's degree. In fact, if you listen to him, he mentioned something about measurement. I never know about what measurement is all about. When I did my first degree, and when I applied to do master's degree, I only look at all these universities in Australia, all of universities, before I finished my first degree. What kind of degree that related with assessment? And I was pinpoint University of Melbourne, because that time they had Master of Assessment and Evaluations. But that year that they offered me a scholarship, they no longer call it Master of Assessment and Evaluation. They only call it Master of Evaluation. So I think, no, I want to do something about assessment. So I ended up, there's only one choice, and it was University of Western Australia at Perth. But when I look at it, oh, it's not Master of Assessment and Evaluation, it's Master of Assessment, Measurement and Evaluation. But when I got there, man, I feel like, man, this is like a bonus. I never know there's something like measurement. Anyway, but those incremental phases of this study from master to PhD, it comes to my conclusions. This is something that maybe you know about it. Assessment for learning. Why, what, and how. If I ask you to explain or describe or define this, you have your own formulation about this. But let's see about this and how we're going to define this. The overview of this presentation, I will start with something why raising achievement is so vital or so pivotal to education. Raising achievement is really important. When you do any kind of research for the trainee teachers, you really have to think about is there a big problem here? Is that a big issue here? Is something really new? So before I started, I was always thinking, raising achievement, student achievement is really important. And let's see why it's so important. And then if we try to raise student achievement, we have to invest in teachers. Thinking about teachers is the answer. Let's see why is the teachers' quality is pivotal for raising student achievement. And then the third part of the presentation, why assessment for learning should be the focus of that investment. We're thinking about teacher quality. Within the teacher quality, assessment for learning is the answer, the solution for this. And then how we can put that into practice. So the presentation is based on these 4 important questions. But before I continue on this one, it's really important to have this kind of concept. We better stop people from doing good things. I can repeat it again. We better stop people from doing good things. And hope this presentation really justifies why we need to stop people from doing good things. This slide is usually I use this slide as an introduction, because when you come to teacher training or any form of education, there are many variables or many factors or components that you try to monitor or measure. Every teacher here, there must be either part of this. And I put it in a ABCD format or list so that it can be easy to remember. So A is for affective. It's related with your feelings. Are you enjoying coming to school? Do you really look forward today to join in this public lecture? Are you engaged? Do you really want to listen to me? It's all about emotions and feelings, how we monitor that. B is for behavioral. Are you a good citizenship people? Are you law-abiding? Do you really follow all the rules in school? All of those is about behavioral and how we monitor that. C is the cognitive part, it's the thinking part, it's the learning part. And most of your school are really focused on cognitive. Maybe you come here and maybe the subject you take is maths or history or economics. Is all about cognitive, and that's major of those big lists about monitor of education is on cognitive. D is a demographic one. It's about the background. When we think about monitor of any school or any providers, we think about, maybe you think about their background. Is this kid is a disabled students or not? About their religions, about their social status. E is about the expenditures. There was one time in one of the lecture series before, we think about how much you expend in school, in public school, in non-government school. The good thing about the CEO of the TIOE, I'm just independent, I'm not biased about government. I can see some people in the government school, they're really thinking about them. Some people in the non-government school, they think about only them. But we look at the government, how they expend their money, how much they pay for non-government teachers, for government teachers, spending, how we monitor that. It's about, F is about the flow. The flow is like how many new teachers at TIOE this year. How about next year? It's about moving or flowing of teachers. How many dropouts? How many did pass in the exam last year or after last year? Or how are we going to predict the passing rate next year or this year? G is about the growth. We try to monitor about the growth. Maybe, and that's one of the interesting study that I just read recently, is dealing about the growth, growth cognitively. It's parallel to growth physically. In physical terms, in the primary school, the kids are just grow slowly, and then get to puberty age, they just they just move in a swift sign and then flattening down. It's the same as cognitively. At EZE primary school, they think like slow and then shoot up like this and then flattening up. They are parallel how the growth of students in terms of cognitive and physicals. So all of these are key variables. If you try to do some research or some study, or if you listen to those people that they're going to do this lecture, is either falling in this one of those variables, one of those components of those factors. Again, I'm just trying to re-emphasize, and this can solve some problems about assessments, call it triangle of learning. Maybe some of you have seen that before, I saw it before. But triangle of learning, it's thinking about curriculum. Curriculum set you what you're going to teach, tell you about the contents. After that, the curriculum, then here are the instructions. You come as a teacher, you teach what is shown in the curriculum. And after you teach the curriculum, then you assess, then you measure how you teach. You know, maybe after one term, this term, you teach the content, and then you're going to assess how you teach. And that's how the triangle of learning works. And then after the assessment, it gives you a feedback to go back to the curriculum and look at the curriculum. Oh, maybe we can remove this, or we can add this, or we leave it like that. However, the issue here, Paul Black and Dylan Williams, these British scholars, they invent this triangle of learning. They found out it's not really the case. Okay, the curriculum tells us the content, how to teach. Yes. But not only that, your assessment really dictates you, force you on how to teach. It's not really teach according to the content of the curriculum, but you teach because this is what is going to happen in the exam. And not only that, the curriculum is more about the exam. It's what we all know about teach to test. And that's vicious cycle. It's this cycle is a clashing, a conflict of one another. It's not supposed to be like that. You are not really teach in here assessments. Assessment dictates how you teach. Assessment dictates the curriculum. I think if you ask Form 5, Form 6, Form 7 teachers, and even the students, that's what they experience. You have to teach the content in order, because that's what is coming in the exam. If you listen carefully to Robin Haver's presentation, one of the questions that Soflisi asked, and he said, oh, I'm doing this, but I have to teach this because that's what is going to come in the exam. See, that kind of mindset or mentality is fixed within us. And that's the issue of this triangle of learning. Okay, but why raising achievement is matters? For individuals, obviously it increases lifetime salary, it improves health, it has longer life. For those who raising student achievements in Germans is about 5 times your salary if you have a degree. In the US, 7 times for males, 10 times for females if you have a degree. In Britain, you have 14 times. If you have a degree, the salary will raise. And that's so how important of raising student achievement. But not only that, but you have a longer life, improving health. For society, I think it's the same thing. It tells us when you're raising student achievement, it's lower criminal justice costs, it's lower healthcare costs, and it increased economic growth. And I put here, I'm just put a net present value to Australia of a 25-point increase on PISA. PISA is a program for international student assessment. It's run by OECD, 38 members countries. They run this kind of exam. and they try to benchmark about all of those who sit this exam. Tonga is unfortunately not included in this exam. But it's so the amount of money that the government can gain when they raise student achievement. When they figure out this kind of exam, PISA assessment, it's sit for 15 years old, or all these neighboring countries, New Zealand, Australia, they are all involved in this kind of exam. I think the exam that we are running here are called BILNA. It's running by IKEP from Fiji. It's the same concept. I don't know, I heard that primary school, they're having exam today, class 2, class 4, class 6, but I never really asked. But I understand that BILNA before. But those kind of exam in here, for Australia, you can see when they have 25-point increase in PISA marks or grades, you can see the amount of money that gained by the government when they're raising student achievement is 2.5 trillion. That's a high stake when we are talking about raising student achievement. High stake is not low stake, this is really big. So the question now, and then where is the solution? If we really need to raise student achievement, you can talk about any other kind of variables that you want to be invested on, but myself, I'm really interested in student achievement. And the question now, where are we going to find the solution? Okay, let's think about the structure. We know about this, smaller and higher and larger high schools. What it means about smaller and large high schools. This is really big in big countries, developing countries. Say about in United States, they're really big about smaller high schools. Maybe you heard about Bill Gates and Melinda Foundations. They spend billions of money on something like this. Get money into the society and to the counties to make school, because usually they have big schools, 3,000 school, number of students, to make it a small school. May divide it into 6, maybe 500 base schools. And in UK, I'm sorry to reference to these places, but because this is the only thing that I have in evidence, and because of evidence. In the in UK, they're not really prefer smaller schools. They are really looking at bigger schools. One principle to look after bigger schools. The issue here, even smaller school or larger schools, the side effect, the effect size of this, or the impact of this is not really much. It's like 0. But in our mentality, when we think it's good to have a class size that's really small, teaching will be much effective. But here, the empirical evidence or the scientific evidence say, no, it's pointing to something different. Alignment. Well, I understand the Ministry of Education had been hired a consultant to look at the curriculum. I think the curriculum for mostly secondary schools. Not only that, but another consultant to look at the assessment. Those are the kind of alignment or reform. Unfortunately, it's like when you reform a curriculum, it's like you give a ball to just kick start, like playing games. Okay, we have put this recommendation and that's it. If we come after five years, nothing really changed, nothing really happened, nothing really implemented. But because politicians love to make those kind of changes, it's so tempted and it's attract a lot of attention onto this. But again, it doesn't really make any big changes. Textbook replacements. Oh, we get new textbook every year, every school, and I'm waiting for big changes here. It doesn't really have any effect size that can raise student achievements. Covenants, not really here in Tonga, but many places in US, UK, Australia, about charter schools. They make this as a big thing. But again, when they look at those charter schools, they are the worst school in related with raising student achievement. Okay, technology. When I was a teacher before, I don't know how many times Vavauhai has been renovated, their computer room, new computer every year, and I was still waiting for the big things. But because this is something big, the Minister of Education last week when we have our board meetings, I say, man, my daughter say they did something on computer. And I said, okay, can you show me the keyboard? The daughter say, oh, we have a computer room in Tonga High, but did they show you what the keyboard looked like? No, we are only copying notes. So yeah, computer has it's an important tool to facilitate learning, but when we go back and look at the raising student achievement, it doesn't make any much difference. This is really popular in the active whiteboards. I heard about this is a new trend coming to the Pacifics. It's happening in New Zealand, in Australia. There are many interactive whiteboards. You go and touch it, it's like the screen, kids playing with it. But in UK, a large study that just happened recently, they found out in London, the government just makes sure that every schools there have an interactive whiteboard. But those schools are the worst schools in related with raising student achievement. Okay, the workforce reforms. I heard about Adelaide. Adelaide, they have teacher assistants, co-teaching. 2 teachers in 1 class now. I hope the common desk has been raised from 10 out of 30 to 15 out of 30. It's those kind of reform. But teacher assistant is a really big reform in the UK. When I have my kids in school, you have your subject teachers and you have a teacher assistant there. But again, when they do these empirical studies, they find, man, it doesn't really work. Raising student achievement, it doesn't make any difference. Now you think, man, but what it works already? All of this we have been doing this. Yes, they are all works. The question, to what extent, to what degree? What you do is, they are all works, I assure you, they are works. But I think when we really look deep into the issue here, then we have to find out. So this, we ask about, is this the solution? Yeah. Now, why investing in teachers is the answer. Now I go back and ask this. So, this is the one. Okay? Whenever someone come and tell me, okay, we can do this and that, yeah, I listen. But I only interested if you start talking about improving teachers' quality. When you start talking about it, then I'm interested. Because I know from empirical evidence, from scientific evidence, that's the one we should look at. We are keep looking at the, what do you call it? The wrong ball. This is the right one that we have to look at. Recently, people are excited, especially Tonga High School students, ex-students that do the fundraising to get a new library, new books, big hall. We are building all this structure. But when we are talking about getting scholarship for teachers, more, you tell me, when was the last time the ministry give a scholarship for students to do master in assessment or PhD in assessment? That's what I'm talking about here. I might be contribute to this because I've been one of the recipients of that. Okay, let's see about the empirical evidence of this. If we take 50 teachers, take a group of 50 teachers, students taught by the most effective teachers, and let the students get the most effective teachers. What we know here, at least 6 months, what those taught by the average teacher learn in a year. That's when you have a most effective teacher in the classroom. Takes only 6 months. If you are so unlucky and your students are being taught by most ineffective teachers, it says here it takes 2 years to achieve what the average teacher can teach. This is an empirical evidence, scientific evidence, experiment that being repeatedly done many times by many thousands of teachers. So when you know most effective teachers, it takes 6 months for every teacher for 1 year. So when we compare that gap for most effective teachers to least effective teachers, we say it's about 4 times. That's big. It's like suiciding if we are not really worried about this. But that's the scientific evidence. It's so that teacher quality play a big role in this. But not only that, for best teachers, it doesn't really matter what is the background, whether the most disadvantaged background students, they can still teach the same amount of rate or pace for those students. Students from disadvantaged backgrounds learn at the same rate as those from advantaged backgrounds. So you can see why it's really important to invest in teachers. However, improving teachers take time, and it comes with a labor force issue here. So the labor force issue here, you either choose to sack all those teachers, okay, or you have to do something about it. We can replace existing teachers with new ones. But the question, are you going to willing to take that? I don't think the ministry can take that. Replace all the existing teachers now. Okay, recruit new ones. But I think TIOE is trying to increase the entrance requirement and all those things, unless the big people from up there tell you to change the entry requirements and all those things. But that's a labor force scenario that we have to think. Or the second choice, we have those teachers, the current one, and help them, empower them to be a better teachers. So those are the 2 choices, and now you can see which choice that I will go with. You either replace, fire all the teachers, existing one, or we're going to empower or do something to the existing teachers. Okay, when we talk about replacing existing teachers with better ones, if we fire ineffective teachers, it means we deselect those least effective teachers. It's about 10% of work on that. And I'm referring to PISA again, this kind of assessment. It's the points different if we replace the existing teachers is only 2 points, not much. And if we're raising the bar for entry into the professions, so it means we exclude the lowest performing ones. Maybe it's about 30% we can do that, but the PISA say it's about only 5%, 5 points difference. And then merit pay for effective teachers, if we get big pay, and then we attract better teachers, but it can't be done fairly, and doesn't work. Maybe you think, why? Because if you really try to think about, we give base for those teachers, and if you really make a test for every year, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and then we give them merit pay to year 4. But how about year 4 was the hopeless teachers, and year 3 was the better one? Year 3 was the teachers that really coach them, tell them about problem solving. So the benefit will gain by the teacher in year 4. So it doesn't really work, and it's not really fair for other teachers. So we have to help the teachers, we have to improve. How we do that? I think this quote, they call it in UK, love the one you have strategy. Okay, louder one you are with strategy. Whatever you have now, we have to do something about it. And it can be done by provided systematic, evidence-based policy, trainings to those, but it's hard to do, but that's the only way to do it. Okay, we need to be clear about what we want when we talk about those teachers. And that's another thing, because most of us as teachers, we think that teachers do great learning. However, it's not. It's not teachers, and I'm sorry to say that. Learners create learning. You are a facilitator. You are a guide to guide those students. Whenever you think you create learning for students, then I'm sorry, you get it wrong. I put a sentence here and say, remember you are responsible for making sure that your students perform to high standards. There was a study, there are two groups have the same treatment and let them do everything exactly the same. There's only one difference that they make for these two groups, this sentence. One group, a sentence was given to them, to their teachers and students. Remember, you are responsible for making sure that the students perform high standards. So that their teachers tell them to the students of that group every day. When they do the training, the treatment, and come back and make a test, when they come back and found out that group with that statement, with that sentence, there's more controlling there. There's less engagement there. Because whatever the teachers say is just try to emphasize this sentence, but not really engaging students on what they have to learn. Okay, these are two important parts of why we really need to engage in this, and why pedagogy of engagements, because this is really important. Maybe you are aware about this. We know that intelligence is inherited, whether you like it or not, but that's what happened. But recently we found intelligence is malleable. We know that inherit, it's in the genes, but they found out not only the genes can change this, but also the environment. There are two components here. The environment can also contribute to how intelligent or how smart you are. It's called Flynn effect. This Flynn effect is named after Saint Flynn from University of FAIAKO. He's a New Zealander. He knows about this effect, these changes in generation after generations. Think about the British Isles. They have an IQ about 15 points higher now than when they were in the Second World War II. The point here that we have to know how smart students or how smart the learner is. It can be trained, it can be coached, it can be mentored, because we have to renorm or recalibrate these new findings. But not only that, but intelligence can create environment. Before, environment can create intelligence. Now intelligence can create environments. And I put here, a new finding here is about engaging radiator children. Kai Claxton's, it's about in places that they are very cold, there are radiator on the wall. And when they ask questions for the student always hide beside the radiator because they don't want to engage and they feel embarrassed if they are being asked about questions. So when we try to engage as much as students, we then do see that the intelligence has been increased. The last part here is the notion of flow. Again, this is an American psychologist, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He talked about the notion of flow, and this is really important. This notions of this concept is related with when we did something, if if the level of competence of the students and the level of difficulty of their work, when they are mismatched, if the level of competence, they get bored. If you give any activity to your students and they know it easily, what you notice from them, they are going to get bored. When you give an activity that is really easy, that is really hard, compared to their level of competence, they get frustrated. I think this is related with what another psychologist that called Vygotsky, the zone of proximal development. It's really important for educations, and this is really psychologists of notion of flow. It's when you do something, you can't really, it's just becoming your innate, it's becoming in your genes. Thinking about dancing, when you're into dancing, it's becoming your flow. Thinking about, for those people who mountain climbing, they call it going bing. When you are in that extreme and that level of difficulty, your concentration is infinite because it's becoming your flow. For those who are programming, computer programming, if you say, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes and you come after 5 hours, they're still there because it's becoming their flow. That's engagement. And this is more about theory. I try to be not really into measurements because I know most of the audience are not really into this, but I feel like maybe this slide will relate it to what my expertise. The first guy here is ROS, and it's related with measurement. ROS model, that's the most dominating model of measurement nowadays. It's more about psychologists. But the model and the concept of this guy, this is a distance. When you set a activity or any task for students, thinking about any task or any test or any activity, you related, there are two variables important here. One is the difficulty of the task or the question or the item, whether it's a multiple choice or an essay. The second variable is the ability of the students. When the task is more difficult than the ability of the students, obviously the student can't do it. When the tasks are easy or lower than the ability of the students, obviously the student can do it. But the most scary thing about this, when the ability of the student is exactly the same as the difficulty of the item, when they are matched, this guy and his mathematical equations found out it's about 50%, 0.5, for that student to be able to do that. When their ability of that particular learner matches with the difficulty of the item. Say for example, I have one student, I give them 10 items, and all those items have the same difficulty. The question is, how many items these students can be able to do it? There are 5 out of the 10. If the difficulty of the items are all the same, 5 will be able to do it, and 5 can't able to do it. Or, if I give one item to 10 students or 10 people, they have the same ability. 5 of them will able to do that questions, and 5 cannot. So that is about the precision and accuracy of measurements or any items. And coming back from the measurement part, thinking about another psychologist, a US psychologist, Robert Kleiser, it's related with criterion referencing. You heard about testing, exam, and more about norm referencing, but it's more about criterion referencing nowadays. And what he says here is the development of procedures where assessment of proficiencies could be referred to stages along progression of increasing competence. I think that's the important highlight there of this psychologist thinking about
increasing of competence. When you know about increasing level of competence, then you can figure out what the kind of interventions that we need to assign or design that will meet that increasing of competence. Competence is really important now in most of the vocational providers trainings, whether you are competent or not competent. But that's not really important. What is really important is the increasing of level of competence. In secondary school, we are talking about solo taxonomy, but it's not really only solo taxonomy. There is a Bloom taxonomy. There is a trifast models. There are different models that show the increasing of level of competency. What is really important, how we're going to design in a task that can decide which intervention that will be matched that level of competency according to this. And again, with developmental theory of Levi-Vygotsky, zone of proximal development, when you match all these three, they are really, really important framework in this kind of way. Okay, the next one involving with teacher quality is the pedagogy of contingencies. Contingency, and you can see I list some of the work that have been covered about this one. When I said about pedagogy of contingency, it's more about how we control or track the level of achievements after the engagement, pedagogy of engagement or try to engage students. And you can see the list here. They are really important lists. I think I will highlight Kruk and Dennis. Kruk and Dennis, this study is a long, did you know study? It's a long study. It was started in 1905 until 1995. So it's about 90 plus of how they really looking at how important of this kind of assessment of feedback, formative assessment or assessment for learning. It's about 95%. And the other one here, I think the most important one here is Paul Black and Dylan William. Paul Black and Dylan William, again, is a British scholars, assessment specialists, and they did something well known as inside the black box. Maybe some of you heard about it. Inside the black box, this study, say you try to test about mathematics or readings, comprehensions, or essay writing, and you do this test. I'll just try to talk about inside the black box. 1/3 of the students, you test them and you get the test. And when you get the test, you only write comments on it, 1/3. 1/3 of the group of the students, you write comments as well as a mark on it. Okay, you make this comment and then put a mark or grade. Maybe you do make 30 out of 40, or maybe you put B, or maybe you put C. And 1/3 of the cohort, you only put marks. You put 30 out of 40 or 95%, or you get A or you get C. The most intriguing thing about this experiment they did by these two, and they did it more than 30 number of students, and they did it repeatedly, 1,000 times. What they found when they look at the achievement of these students, those students with comment only, they have the highest mark. Those students, the 1/3 with grade only, they have the lowest mark. But the funny one are those students with marks and comments. They have the same exact mark as those students with mark only. So what we really learn here, the mark plus the comments, the marks suppress or prevent the student from focus on comments only. And that's what they call it inside the black box. It's related with feedback. But this is most important because this kind of investigations, all of investigation that you heard about in educations, I bet this one was the most probably better map than any other field in educations in terms of what the big findings are. And the consistency of the finding is substantial. I'm really sorry to say that, but that's what I've been keep reviewing all the literature that I have, and it's pointing all about this kind of research. Maybe you come with telling me all about FAIAKO, Tonga, and all this mathematics, physics, and all those things, but this is the most established, well-established one. Okay, within the teacher quality and why assessment for learning should be the focus of investment. As I said before, everyone has different formulations about assessments, but I try to unpack what formative assessment or assessment for learning. There are key processes here. There are three main key processes when we talk about this. First, you have to establish where the learner is. Second, you have to establish where they are going. And the third one, in working out how to get there. Those are the key processes under formative assessment or assessment for learning. And there are key agencies there, or key agents, or key people here. One is teachers, one is learners, and one is your peers, your friends in this classroom. So, when we have that three key process, 3 participants, 3 times 3, we have 9 metrics here. Where the learner is going, where the learner is, how to get there, teachers, peers, and learner. Okay. And there are key strategies, that's what they call, 5 key strategies. So whenever you talk about formative assessments or assessment for learning, and you never really involve these 5 key strategies, then I'm sorry, it's not really formative assessment or assessment for learning. I don't know what your teachers taught you about, I'm sorry, I might be wrong, but this is what I learned from all these literature. Okay, the first one, key strategy, is qualifying, sharing, and understanding learning intentions, or learning outcomes, or learning targets, or learning objective, and knowing what success criteria look like, what the criteria of success. That's the first key strategies. And these involve all participants. And the second key strategies is how you engineering effective discussion, tasks, and activities that elicit evidence of learning. That's a very important way, engineering. You can see how they're working this. You think about people who are doing engineering, mending, you do this and that, remove this, put this on, do that. To elicit evidence of learning. This is really important. How are we going to show? Because learning is an abstract. You can't really see it. Some people, they call it a latent variable. It's latent, it's hidden. But how are you going to express it, to demonstrate it, to show it? You have to do something. Okay, number 3, providing feedback that moves learners forward. Most of our feedback we have to talk about, it's most like looking backward. It's like you having a mirror, rear mirror. You always look at the back. You do the test and you tell them, you should do this, you should do this. It's all about something that happened in the past. And after the exam, okay, we move to the new units. It doesn't really have any relevance to the next units or to the next class or to the next topic. But the kind of feedback that they're talking about here is something that you use looking forward, learning ahead. Okay, number 4, activating students as learning resources for one another. It's more about peer assessment. Okay, you activate your friends, your peers as learning resources. And the last one, activating students as owner of their own learning. It's more about self-assessment. You self-assess yourself, you make yourself as your own learner. Remember I told you before, teachers, you're not really the learner, you're not really teaching learning. It's only the learners really learn themselves. So you have to really know how to activate it. And I'm really not putting self-assessment here, but because they are also involved some other methods here, motivation, metacognitive, part, how you're thinking about thinking. So these are the 5 key strategies that encompass what formative assessment is, or assessment for learning. Whether you practice this or utilize this, I don't really know, but these are encompass or compromise the terrain of assessment for learning. So, and the one big idea about this one, we use all these 5 strategies to get evidence, so to adapt our way of teachings to meet student learning needs. That's the one big idea. Use evidence about learning to adapt what happens, to adjust every time we teach about what happened to meet the student learning needs. Okay, many countries, big countries, most developing countries, they are really big. They do this. Government, politicians, policy makers, they are really into this, put a lot of money here. And that's why I call it assessment for learning hijacks, because everyone then, okay, this is the silver bullet. We do this, we have to do this. But it happens in different cycles. Assessment for learning, it can be a long cycle. You can do this within days. Say, I'm teaching chemistry, I'm teaching how to balance chemical equations. Before an exam, I have to teach this, I have to practice this, I have to revise this before we do it. It can be a medium cycle. It can be within and between teaching units. Maybe 1 to 4 units, 1 to 4 weeks. Sometimes I come to schools and one teacher say, do you want to come to my assessment for learning class? Really? You have an assessment for learning class? I thought that assessment for learning is just happening every day by day, minutes by minutes. And if you ask students, oh, I'm in level C, I want to be in level B. Oh, I'm in 50 percentiles, I want to be in 60 percentiles. Those are the kind of feedback that they had being received. But I think the most important one, the most important kind of formative assessment, the short cycle formative assessment for learning, is the day by day, or 24 hours to 44 hours, or minute by minute. That is the most effective assessment for learning through research. It's how you do all these key strategies within minute by minute, day by day. Okay, I think the question is, everything I've been saying is nothing new. I could tell you the same thing 5 years ago. You might think, oh, because he did his PhD, this is a new thing. No. If I never did my PhD, I will come back again and tell you the same exact thing. But the question is, why smart people still do dumb things? I think that's the question, sir. We think that we are educated people. We think that this is the right thing to do, but why? I think it comes back to these two. We have to really think about the contents and then the process. Because changing teachers' behavior or attitude or habits is really hard. When I'm talking about content here, yes, we can think about content knowledge. Teachers are full of knowledge. You have your own way of doing things. I don't have to really feel all those knowledge within you. Some people say, okay, we have something, teacher community learnings, getting group of teachers in one class and then share and deliberate about key strategy and key techniques that will enhance our teachings and raising student achievements. Well, it can work, but sometimes not really. Maybe you get teachers in one room and then maybe you talk about gossiping about other people. Not really the topic that you really want to talk about. So I think what is really important here are the process, how to go about those changes. I list this process here. Maybe it's another time to talk about, but a key variables, key factors here for those processes. You have to give the freedom of choice for teachers to do these things. They have to be very flexible on how to design their tasks and their activities. Teachers changes in small steps, incremental changes, not big steps. Yes, we need to be accountable in what we do and what we say. Not only that, but teachers need support for doing these things. Okay, last part. When we talk about these key strategies, for myself, they are non-negotiable. You're not going to go against it. It's no-brainers. You have to do all those 5 key strategies. The thing is here is about the techniques. We have to make a distinction between key strategy that are being explained and the technique that you use. At times, or sometimes when I talk about those techniques, some teachers say, okay, how many techniques you have? Okay, I might have 100 techniques. Can I have those techniques? I bet you have enough techniques with you now. I don't have to give you extra techniques. And don't ever overburden yourself with many techniques. Because some teachers say, oh, I did that before, but I'm doing something else now. Oh, I know, I did that before. That's not really what's important. So it's really important to identify the techniques that enhance those key strategies. Okay, let's start with the first key strategy, sharing learning intentions and success criteria for success. This is really important. If for some of you who get access to the New Zealand exam, NZQA exam, they give you exam, they give you marking scheme, but not only that, they give you a marking scheme as the work from students, and they already ranking a sheet, a work by student that being identified as a sheet. Some students are being merit, and some students then being excellent. The point that I try to make here, they give them the success for criteria for success. It then that we're really hiding the criteria for success from our students. We want them to fail. We didn't really want to give them, these are the criteria for success. It's like when we are talking about the solo taxonomy in the prescription of Form 5, Form 6, Form 7. We tell them, okay, this is level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. But the weakness here, or the failure here, or the failed part here, we never really tell them what level 1 look like, what level 4 look like. Your level 4 will be different from my level 4, I bet. That's one of the biggest issues with all these prescriptions. Because if I give you a question and you say this is level 1, without the criteria for success, man, everyone will have their own criteria, their own standards. Thinking about practicals, when you do practicals for science students, can you keep those practicals from last year? So do them. These are the average practicals marking. These are the excellent one. These are the so-so one. Maybe they can do better than those papers. So the standard will be increased again. So we renown those. Eliciting evidence, many whiteboards. Eliciting evidence, many whiteboards. I think this one, it's more about when you come to school, to the class, everyone have a mini whiteboard. Maybe this is something new. But when you ask the questions, everyone will write their answer there and then they show it to the teachers. So that's about pedagogy of engagement. Everyone engaged. There's no hidden here. Because when you ask a question without no mini whiteboard, the kids will just raise their hand, and almost only the smart kids will raise their hands. The not so smart kids, they like the radiator children. They hide under the table, they hide under the radiator. But this way, there's no other way. They have to solve. Providing feedbacks. Match the comments to the essay. I put that match the comment to the essays. Some teachers I came across, especially writing essay, when they make their comments, on the margins, they put letter P, letter S, letter G. And I asked, why you put those letters? The teacher say, this English teacher say, oh, I want them to think. I put G in this sentence. They have to figure out, they know it's about grammar. If I put S in this one line, oh, they have to find out in that line, there's a spelling error there. So it's a matter of how we're going to do it. And then some teachers, they put it four corners, A, B, C, D, on providing feedback. And then they divided those comments to corner A, B, C, and D. When they come out, the students have to figure out, is this your comment for this essay, or this essay, or this essay? So they have to find out which comment that matches to that particular essay. I talked about the black box before. Students, as owner of their learning, they use color cups here. They use red, orange, and green. When students don't really know what the teacher say, they put green. When they really know what I'm talking about, maybe you just, I keep talking like this, maybe you just red, 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 red. Okay, but when you put green, okay, if you put a green cup, you pick on that student, you come up and tell all those students, explain to them what I was talking about. Those students with red cup. Student as learning resources for one another. The pre-flight checklist. Using learning resources for one another. I usually do this in my experiments when I was a teacher. It's a pre-flight checklist. I'm not really marking anything. I give students to do this work. I draw the guideline or the criteria and let one student do the other pair. Okay, you check whether they have a title, whether they draw using a pencil, whether they complete all the questions. Not only they feel responsible for that training, for that work or that activities, but they help each other. And if there any mistake here, the person who do the pre-flight checklist will be responsible for that mistake or for that errors. So all of this about techniques about those key strategies. The important thing here, key strategies, no other choice, we have to do it. But the techniques, we leave it for individual teachers to figure it out according to their needs and to their demands. Okay, I'll finish up. I know it will, it's like those are one of those indicators when you teach assessment for learning. You just tell them, okay, they keep smiling. Okay, they all understand, let's move on. But that's a poor proxy for learning. But when they look frowning, okay, it tells you, you better stop. Okay, I'll finish up with this because this is really important. All of this, most of this, something that you learn about, you experience before. But what is so hard about this, I think it's not about your knowledge, it's about our habits. It's like when we really learning about Weight Watchers. Those people who know about Weight Watchers, there are only two fundamentals, basic knowledge about losing weight. You eat less and you exercise more. That's it. There's no other secret recipe for losing weight. Me, myself, I've been this size ever since. Why? I eat less. It's as simple as that. It's not like there's a secret recipe for losing weight. Is you have to swelling the cornflakes and milk anti-clockwise, then that's how you eat it, and then you're losing weight. But the point is here, these wake watchers really know about the business is not really about your knowledge. It's about your habits, your attitudes. I think that is important. Again, may I leave this with this quote by Samuel Beckett. He's an Irish poet. He is a Nobel Prize in literature. Talking about all of this, we can see that teachers are obliged to fail. And I challenge you, like Esther Dyson said, you have no excuse not to make new mistakes every day. As a teacher, I fully support you and encourage you to make mistakes. Like Samuel Beckett said, ever try? Ever fail? Try again. Fail again. Fail better. So I know my presentation tonight is another fail, but I bet if I come again and present again, I'll fail better. Malo.
So I want to invite two speakers to the mic. So we want to go on to the next session, the question session. Or do one or two questions or comments before we complete the night? Yep, hello.
What would be comment that we look at the those who need the FAIAKO. And we had a board where the FAIAKO is now for those who need the FAIAKO. So the final of the area will be the one of the FAIAKO. How are we able to find ourselves? We're phía mặt của FAIAKO ấy là một skill về nghề, là một cái làm mạng TIOE là cái gì? Rồi anh ấy học qua ai sẽ tập mặt FAIAKO ấy là phải cái skill về nghề, ai là lúc đi là coi phải có skill về nghề một khi mà đời đi một bạn bè mà cái hệ anh mình nhận được. Bây giờ tôi biết là tạo từ bộ mau skill dari lei atau FAIAKO tapi kopi. Mereka itu mak tahu lah dari. Ni mak bawa macam. Kau apa kata mahal mati kalau mahal. Yang bodoh kau kan mau. Nah skill dari ni tahu kau sih kau tahu FAIAKO ada dari kursi mak. Tapi kau ya dia kai fikir he kau ni dah dia. Kau ni memang boleh makan no kira. Học hơi mà uống nhẹ kê, ông có tay ra rồi, có ra ta pe phản nào có vậy, cái con nào là phản nào có luôn,แต่mau mà muốn cái cái cà phê này, nó đóng xin cái gì sao, nó đã mà được hội example rồi ta, rồi cái cái quá có cái này USB, và ông ấy cái điều file editorial. Kita tahu sih, kau iPhone, ya aku. Oleh sebab saya iPhone ke foto itu komputer sah. Kau tu dah udah ke USB saja, kau ke aku fit. Semua itu saya yang ini kilo, kau memalah, kau apa itu lele yang ini kilo. Kau kan kau ke aku fit kan dia foto saya lobby. Karena dia sukses tu tambah bayar dia soal-soal kau. Kau yang kau dia mau dia decide patah FAIAKO mesti. Tahu apa dia siap tahu lah bisa. Kau yang dia mau.
Could you comment here? Could you tahu Twitter tahu ke? I think just to add on that, maybe you heard about John Hattie. He's a New Zealander. He's the director of in University of Melbourne on research center there.
and he's the director of ASIL, it's the Australian big project there. But I think why I mention his name, he research so I think the most influencing factor in education is the student himself or herself. 50%, 30% is the teachers, but the whole system, parents, all other factors. Aku hangi ko pada noa pailo, kemau ke meet yung ability, interest, kado umia kado kaya mo FAIAKO mo leka ako. But at the same time, I'll be bored if we are in the same route. I want some challenge. I would much prefer the student to feel ignored, isolated, and my role is to make sure to convince or change it. Mahino ba kadadole ko maybe ko fana ko photo benado now ilo benado fai mo buan wa ko I wa kwang do fatano mau sai paper. From my experience, personal experience, I'd rather have students that they are weak students. And I bet I tell you, that's what's happened when I was in New. When I was in Vavawai, why I choose to go to Vavawai, when I finished, that's another experience. When I finished from Adelaide Uni, when I came, they assigned me to teach in Tonga High. But I never want to teach in Tonga High. Because in the back of my mind, I want to go to a school that I will show that can happen. And you know, it was 2002, 3, 4, and 5, I think, and 6. There was about 4 or 5 years. The exam, not national, but regional exam, was Vavau came, one at top 10 in Vavau High. Not I'm saying I'm responsible for that, but it's so, that's the beauty of teaching. It has some complexity there. Because we always think Tonga High will be always the tops. School, they find it easy, I tell you. When I was in Niwa, there was a palangi there. Whoever was in Niwa, they know there was a palangi teach there, and then he challenged me. You can't do that, you can't do that. These kids are like that and that and that palangi. But I think that's why it's so rewarding, frustrating, challenging at the same time. But I'd rather have a student with that kind of issue than have that student that meet my ability or interest. It's just to comment, Malo.
Pamalo lah tu Opeti presentation mahino o tapi ni dia lah yang itu kalau no mai ngahi kamu oni ngahi tapi itu lah ya sela aku Pinuwi ko nga uwaki o ku kefe nai ho makai ki phone assessment ko atong mali. Jadi talano nai solo pag kise ko talapalina ko it's the how card ko phone ko no pagkaho ko. Hanay ha uwaki hanay ha hanga hindi ako kefe di pakalele di labi ta mo kau FAIAKO ito lakay kinu assessment uwaki niya. Kuwa ko lawe pe ko dungi mau pana wa ko na ku mau diploma ya alwa tu tipechila ka ko ko ya tu assessment to ngan ko lawe to ko si ya ko hanai ha o ha pale tu kana o ki hokwa tu ta de pito de ta pa asini o ni
Mahalo Beolaki, the questions, the first part of the questions other approaches or strategy that we have to make CV. I think CV was an issue, big issue recently. When the solo games in, I have to be upfront with you. There was a big issue, and it was said when I found out when we talk about to teachers, I never really let them know. I just want to stay in the middle and listen to them. Even principals, deputy principals in the government school, and they really betting on solo. And I'm really sad because part of the literature review in my thesis is talking about all this kind of taxonomy. It's not really that important. What is most important, you have to go to your class and teach the kids. And it's really sad when you find out the teachers, they say, oh, because the solo say that and that and that and that and that. And it doesn't really help because the curriculum, even the curriculum unit here, I don't know what I'm going to say, it might be offensive to them, but I have full respect to all of these people involved. Maybe that's why they're not involved me in the assessment anymore this year, because I'm being so upfront of what I'm believing or my experience. But one issue here that we have to really think about, because what I've been trying to show tonight, classroom assessment, or assessment for learning, classroom assessment, is the biggest influence on student achievement, raising student achievement. And how we're going to link that with standardized exam or external exam. There are ways, yes, there are ways, but then we need another session to talk about the ways that we can use a classroom assessment can match a standardized or external exam. I know there are key people there, Australian, in US, in UK, they do things like that, where they match all these requirements, but maybe it will take time here in Tonga. The next part of the questions, what are you going to tell these kids doing their diploma this year or doing their bachelor? I think myself personally, as I mentioned at the very beginning, there are little things that happen in my life that really push me to do this assessment. First, because I failed when I was class 6, and it means a lot to me. When I did high school, I know I'm going to do something on assessment. I'm going to do something on assessment. When I finished the first degree, I already looked all over Australia, all over UK. If you come and read my email, I already emailed these people that I end up working with them as my supervisors. So it's more about consistency, persevere. Maybe you will get there. But if you not get there, maybe something better that you're going to do. But it's all about all those things. And it doesn't have you, the other thing I know, you don't have to be really good in maths. There are key people that running project in Australia. One of the colleagues that we worked with when I was in UWA, I just found out she never take maths in high school or secondary school. It doesn't mean, oh, I can do assessment without maths. No, but it's still doable. You can still do it. Yeah. I hope that I answered the questions. Yep.
Yeah, yep.
Ako tau sio ko ki tunga ko tongani konteks sa tongani o ko ngai level lo depende ni le curriculum political level. When new government comes, no matter whether you have some evidence we should use this and that, when the political leaders say change comes, there's no choice. That's one. So political levels have a part to play in here. The second part, it's more about decision by after that level of political leaders, based on what the kind of feedback, and I hope that we get all those kind of feedback, because it seems like there is a disconnection here. That's how I feel personally. The gaps between university and what you do in secondary school is huge. So it means we never really consult the right people. Who are we consult? Did they talk to the TIOE curriculum unit? Oh, this is what we should do. This is what, do they talk to USB people? Or do they referencing Because one time I was working with some exam paper and one woman from the curriculum said, "Oh, you are acting like you are trying to do the New Zealand one." I thought that we are trying to benchmark, referencing to something like that. We need to raise those standards. Now we are thinking about going back and do our own little thing, little well. But we really need to have some quality assurance process in place to really look and monitor what the curriculum people are doing. And I'm not saying this to here for a Kalia curriculum. No, I think they try as hard as they can, but we can still see there's still room for improvement, for better. And it's really hard when we say something like that, like me. See, here, how for all. But we only can do so much. Yeah.
What does it mean?
Failure vi lai ku winga sio ku follow Tonga Institute ko nga hai role assessment. We know assessment is the bridge between teaching and learning. That's how we know. Ko talano ko go pe ku follow ako. And it's really hard because before we ko talano ko ke follow mo na we have a number. The issue is about the number. If I give you 75, you don't really know what that 75 stands for, unless you put another number besides 75. So when you put another number, then you can able to compare. But often when you compare, comparative, it's also come with competitive. Kako issue ko compare. It's really hard before. Na ay tau CV fakatahan ng iPhone kaungabi, which no. Then we can able to compare standard. Tainim tau tolube. Koi ke tau to compare mo hai. How do we know? Og sayang tau kosi taun. But another issue involved there. Sayang taun tau kosi. Hefe kapag ko tau kosi the kids was so smart. Then the kids this year. Possibility ako ya poko ya. Og to uya fusaya ko to video ka leka ko ya. Hefe kapag ko CV tau kosi na mama ang ya. He CV tau ni. So all those issues involved. So it's really hard. We have those evidence? Do we have the data get the find and not for people or see from year to year the standard to be maintained or sustained. And there are no ways of involving me. But tau whanau bea tau tōre ke foi peset. Oh, nai tōwhiha kau lawa tonga hai peset i wano. Nai tōwhiha kau lawa kunsalo te, nai nimango fu. And that's it. But tau toki compare whakapeset i bea. But did we really ask, nai mama ang isivi koe pei kai? Nai poto ang tō koe pei kai? So, oku kei mesi be for I concepia koe, or comparisons be koe whole. But I had a feeling, if I have a goal to really study those things, the standard is not improved. That's my feeling. That's my hunch, my hypothesis on that. Koe mea koe koe ke tangutu ko whai koe mea koe, that's another issue. Ke study ang mea koe ya. E ke he ia, when I talk about pilna, oku whai e CV, ai pilna mai mea koe kalasi ono, tainim, atongani, Vanuatu, Solomone, Fiji, Haamoa. That's really be good when we compare. Pe whakalaka e tau kalasi ono, pe ikai. He koe hano hinga, because we have another number beside our number to compare with. Then we can see, oh, the standard has been improved at rasiono. Nak tau po po uli lere tani po ke te fa po ako, and you can see the impact of exam. I say that's why PISA is a really big thing, the program for international student achievement test. Ai PISA kon go na ka no ga nai. Ko nga ko ngai follow ka to mama ni ai ko pa mo ma o ke talanoa ko Finland it top. But Finland is going like this now. Ai ko me ko na ka no ga kai ko Finland ni ai ho si pe tai mi ako pe nai pe pe ka fa ya ko ha fe ka to ka kai muy ke te he. Ta go ke he pe context ya Finland. Ka Finland ni ko ho to. Singapore, China, they are like that. And how we know they are really high up there? Because of that kind of exam, a common exam for all countries. We don't have that here. Maybe the bill now can reflect some, but only for primary for you.
Yep. Yep, sorry. My program was also the student of the trade. So to trade the rating, the student is also good. About the trade, the rating. It's our effective.
I think that is here. Teachers create the environment for learners to learn. I think that's the point that I want to make. Learners create learning for themselves, but the teachers create environment for the learners to learn. That's the point that we have to know, to remember, to hang on that. But because too much accountability purpose in learning in every education system, ko tau fai ha ke tau to ka fai ako ke tau to na be tau to fatongia ko learners. Now every afternoon we go home, man, I'm so exhausted. Why? Because I've been teaching. I have taught this. You never really ask the question, have they learned this? So there are two different things. I have taught this, or have they learned this? Oh, you taught it, but that's not guarantee or make an assurance 100% they learn it. But we have to create an environment that really high quality for kids to learn. I think that's what the Family call Matthew effect. What Matthew effect is called back to the Bible, Matthew with the tufa taleniti. Na vato taleniti ko nima, naging awe ethi. Na vato ko nta, naging awe ethi. And that's what they usually call in measurement, Matthew effect. Yes, that's really important. That's really true. Kids have different abilities, and don't expect that they will get to the depth, the aim, all in the. No, but they have different ways of getting to it. I don't expect everyone to be fast in exam every day or every day. But that's the beauty of this way. It's so challenging, it's so frustrating, yet it's so rewarding.
Algo very, no, bukan aku pas-pasin balik.
Ke whama popo e on ko hio ki maoroa on ka roi tuka ni ala tāma ke ko ki highlight that there three major things now pick up me he lea ko na Opeti. So firstly, Dr. Opeti, on behalf of the Dean, Principal and the TIOE teachers and students, and we thank you malo Opeti for this great and innovative presentation you have done tonight. It's mean a lot to us as teachers here at TIOE. You gave us, you told us a very touching story. Introduction, kamata ko which I think oku kiema ke whanongo ki ai TIOE students, parents, of now whanongo mai he ope pe koe whanau, ko hi koe failure. There's a new beginning. Oku ikai koe ngata aha. Another one now, we all ke whamapo pa kundea stop people from doing good things. I give you saying it was a little bit confusing to me. I give you quote stop people from doing good things, but you really demonstrated in your explanation conclusion that fail ke tau whengai, ke tau grow, ke tau hoko atu, ke tau tupu. Once you think that you are perfect, o sia, ko te piri o te ia, ai mea ko ia. Koe whala pia kou whakawhawhaia CEO o loto lah ki te rea, aki ai koloa ho loto. Ko ho tuku mai ai, koe mea ia kou tui moa ki ai. Koe our worst enemy as teachers, that we fear. We can't say what we believe. We can't say what we think. Aya ko fear of fulah I teachers. Aya ko presentation ko po ni o ke loto lah ke wahe mai ai ngahi mea o ki holoto ka ko fear lah ya ton ke ma o ka FAIAKO e pa hinga natula ko ya. Natula re ia ke ngawe aki ngawe. Pea koe taha whuki ia o tau mua e an, koe whawholai wha. Koe tau talanoa ko ni koe talanoa ko a kai. Neo ngau tau nofo pehe whare taha. Koe re kena ku ke mea ai. Pea koe re keni o ku mau whakautua ai. Pea o ku mau whia o hi o tau whekite ngaki pehe ngahi reke i he whare o mama. Koe to koni ko toa pehe kono promote ai mama I ho tau phone one. Koe coming to my conclusion, we need to rethink. We need to rebuild the house of land. Aya ko ku tau ia tau eke peka ki tau tol hangai peka presentation ko ko whaia Opeti. Aya ku whamalo lah ia tua ia Opeti whangai pe ai tin pura ko mo ka FAIAKO e whamalo te ko tau whaasi mua ai pepin pa ko hiri pe ko ni pa pe atu ai ke speaker wai ki whakamoko pe he pe mo tol ko to pe ki tau lawa ki ai o whaoski ai tau po talanoa. Tau whaos, le gresia tau e ko sisu Christ, moa whae tua mo whehe lau maari maarion. Ke I he tariki tā ia, kau maa e pure ako, mo tol ko tō peo na hiri, ka whae tua tai hata. Amen. Mao.